If Jack is our natural born leader, then Roger is without doubt our natural born killer. If you just look at a few of the words that are written on this sheet, it's easy to see who Roger is, where we see words like violence, bloodshed, killing, torture, death, hunt. This evil. This isn't our the nice guy of the story. This is one, I suppose, what has been written at the bottom of the sheet. This is our incomprehensible evil side to humans, the thing we just don't understand in ourselves that seems to repeat itself throughout history. But let's have a look at how it manifests itself through Roger and what he is, because he has a very important role in this book. He is the person who is, I suppose, Simon's polar opposite. They do have some things in common. Namely, they understand that what the lack of authority gives rise to. Namely, it creates the potential for great evil. Simon sees it, but so does Roger. The difference is, Simon wants to protect the group, Roger wants to move in and take advantage, and does take advantage of this situation. And I suppose that's what you can see that's been written here. In the absence of rules, in the absence of authority, Roger exploits the situation. But this happens very, very slowly. Yeah? It's a step-by-step process, even for him, as he tests the waters. Yeah? If we look at one of the first things he does, is that he throws stones at a group, at one little one, yeah, without the intent of hitting him. And it's like this barrier protecting them. What is that barrier? That barrier is the old rules of authority in society. But this is his first testing of the water to see how far can I go. Now, how far can I go? We should see how quickly he finds out exactly how far he can go. We see him tormenting others in different parts of the book. The ceremonies, he goes over the top in the ceremonies when they're recreating their hunt. His savageness in the hunt itself, he isn't just content to kill the pig. It's a very bloody process with sticking the pig, the spear up the arse of the pig, and rejoicing in those processes, and seeing that animal die in a bloody, in a violent way. We see him beating and torturing others, and for no reason, such as Wilfred, if I'm when it seems that that's what Jack wants, he acts on Jack's orders, or his wishes, so to speak. He goes along with Jack. We then this develops further. Then we look at him, the next part, killing Piggy. He sees, or at least he believes, there are two camps here. There's us and there's them. And to quote a famous man, you're either with us or you're against us. And Piggy was against them, and they let him know it. And he had no second thoughts about bringing Piggy to an end. He tortured members of the group after they'd split away from Jack. That included Sam and Eric when they joined. He tortured them in order to get information, in order to find Ralph. And then we see his final descent into the limits of how far he can go. And what we find out is there are no limits. As he's preparing for Ralph's death, by sharpening a stick at both ends. What are his plans? His plans are quite simple. He's going to sacrifice Ralph in the same way the pig was sacrificed earlier, in the same way the pig's head was left as an offer for the beast. So there's another interesting side. If we want to look at the friendship and the loyalty side, we do see that he's loyal to Jack, because Jack condones his behaviour. In fact, his behaviour helps Jack achieve leadership, achieve authority, achieve power. At the same time, he looks up to Jack. We know that. We know that in sentences like, he's a proper chief, isn't he? As opposed to Ralph, obviously. But at the end of the day, what do we see in him? We see the potential for a breakdown of civilization in the absence of rules, or in the absence of what we would call the rules of being civilized. Roger welcomes this savagery in the form of violence, but this is quite horrifying for us as humans, quite incomprehensible. Well, wait a second, we'll just have a look at this in terms of the incomprehensible evil side to humans. Just think of the history of human beings with things such as torture, but human sacrifice, and we've seen acts of genocide throughout history. We've seen all sorts of purges throughout history, whether they be related to religion or other differences humans have. These are a list of atrocities that emerge in cases, in situations where there is an absence of rules. And this is something we find incomprehensible in ourselves, and there's a reason why we find it difficult to identify with Roger. His parallels are fairly easy to find if we look at any the sort of henchmen that conducted or carried out the evil wishes of leaders. So in the case of World War II, we could write down the Gestapo as the organisation responsible for genocide, responsible for the strong-arm tactics of Adolf Hitler. But in many cases we have seen groups such as this with the ability, or with the role of carrying out these sorts of things, and that's what Roger represents in this book. The question is, why do these sorts of figures, these Roger figures, repeat themselves throughout history, even though we were always able to look back on these situations and see it for what it is, but still, when the situation arises, there seems always to be someone willing and able to step into the breach and take on this role quite willingly.